Hello there.
There's this moment that happens sometimes, usually at night, when the world outside has gone quiet, and the only sound is the low hum of the ceiling fan above you. You're lying there, staring up at the pale glow the streetlight casts across your bedroom ceiling, and your mind starts to wander. Maybe it's raining. Maybe you can hear the soft patter against the window, each drop tracing its own path down the glass. Or maybe it's just silence, that thick, heavy kind of silence that makes you feel like you're the only person awake in the entire world. And then, out of nowhere, a question floats up from somewhere deep inside you. What do I do? Not in the practical sense, not what should I do right now, or what's on my to-do list tomorrow, but the bigger version, the one people ask at parties, at family gatherings, when they tilt their head and smile politely and say, "So, what do you do?" It's such a simple question. 4 words. And yet, sometimes, it lands like a stone in your chest. Because the truth is, you don't always have a clean answer. You don't always have a title that fits neatly on a business card, or a one-sentence explanation that makes people nod and say, "Oh, that's cool." Sometimes, what you do doesn't have a name yet. Sometimes, you're in between things. Sometimes, you're still figuring it out. And in those moments, lying there in the dark, with the rain falling or the silence pressing in, it can feel like the hardest question in the world to answer. So why does that question hit so hard? I think it's because somewhere along the way, we learned that what we do is supposed to define who we are. Like our worth can be measured in job titles, degrees, or the number of projects we can list when someone asks. We've been taught to introduce ourselves not with our name and our heart, but with our resume. And that's a heavy thing to carry. Think about it like this. Imagine you're a tree. You've got roots reaching deep into the soil, branches stretching toward the sky, leaves that change with the seasons. You provide shade. You shelter birds. You grow quietly, steadily, in your own time. But when someone walks by and asks, "What kind of tree are you?" they're not asking about your roots or your leaves or the way the light filters through your branches. They're asking for a label: oak, maple, pine. And if you don't have that label yet, if you're still growing, still figuring out what shape you're becoming, then suddenly you feel incomplete, like you're not enough just as you are. But here's the thing, you are allowed to be in process. You're allowed to be someone who's exploring, experimenting, trying things out. You're allowed to have interests that don't fit into a neat category. You're allowed to be between chapters, between versions of yourself. You're allowed to say, "I don't know yet," and not feel like you're failing. Because life isn't a form you fill out once and submit. It's not a single answer on a test. It's more like a river, always moving, always shifting, carving new paths through stone. And just because you can't name exactly where the river is going doesn't mean it's not flowing in the right direction. The discomfort you feel when someone asks, "What do you do?" that's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that you're bigger than a box, that you're more than a bullet point, that your story is still being written. And honestly, that's exactly as it should be. I remember this one time. I was at a coffee shop, sitting by the window with my laptop open, pretending to work but mostly just watching the people pass by outside. The place smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon, and there was this soft indie playlist humming in the background, the kind that makes you feel both cozy and a little melancholic at the same time. I'd been there for maybe an hour when someone tapped on the table next to me. It was an old acquaintance, someone I hadn't seen since college. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, the "Oh my God, how have you been?" And "It's been so long." And then, inevitably, it came. "So, what are you up to these days?" I felt my stomach tighten. My fingers hovered over the keyboard like they were frozen mid-sentence. Because the truth was, I didn't really know how to answer. At that point in my life, I was doing a little bit of everything and not quite enough of anything. I was freelancing here and there, working on a few personal projects that hadn't gone anywhere yet, taking online courses I wasn't sure would lead to anything. I was trying, actively trying, but none of it had a name. None of it sounded impressive when you said it out loud. So I stumbled through some vague explanation. Oh, you know, just working on some projects, figuring things out. I laughed awkwardly, hoping that would be enough. They nodded politely, but I could see it in their eyes, that brief flicker of confusion, maybe even pity, like they were trying to figure out what I'd been doing with my life while they'd been climbing ladders and checking boxes. The conversation moved on quickly after that. We talked about other things, exchanged numbers we probably wouldn't use, and said goodbye. But even after they left, I stayed in that coffee shop for another 2 hours, staring at my screen, feeling this strange mix of shame and frustration. Not because I wasn't doing anything. I was doing things, but because what I was doing didn't fit into the neat little scripts we are all supposed to follow. It didn't have a title. It didn't have a timeline. It was messy and uncertain and still unfolding. And I felt like I'd somehow failed a test I didn't know I was taking. I remember walking home that evening, the sky turning that soft purple blue you only get right before dark, and feeling so small, like the world was moving forward and I was stuck in place, watching everyone else know exactly where they were going. But here's what I didn't realize then, what I wish I could have told myself in that moment. What I didn't realize then was that the question itself was never really about me. When people ask, "What do you do?" they're not asking because they're genuinely curious about the shape of your days or the quiet work you're doing behind the scenes. Most of the time, they're just looking for a familiar reference point, a way to place you in the map they already understand. And if you don't fit neatly into one of those pre-drawn boxes, it doesn't mean you're lost. It just means you're walking a different kind of path. I think we spend so much time trying to have the right answer that we forget there are 1,000 ways to live a meaningful life. And most of them don't come with titles or clear trajectories. Most of them are built slowly, quietly, in the margins, through the things we care about, the people we show up for, the small acts of creativity or courage we practice when no one's watching. You don't owe anyone a performance of productivity. You don't owe anyone proof that your time has been well spent. The truth is, some of the most important work we do in life is invisible. It's the healing, the unlearning, the building of something that doesn't exist yet. And just because it can't be summarized in a LinkedIn headline doesn't mean it doesn't matter. I've learned that it's okay to say, "I'm still figuring it out." It's okay to be in the middle of your own becoming and not have all the answers yet. It's okay to be someone whose life doesn't make sense to other people, as long as it makes sense to you, or even if it doesn't, as long as you're willing to keep exploring. Because maybe the point isn't to have a perfect answer. Maybe the point is to keep asking better questions, to keep showing up for yourself, even when the path isn't clear, to trust that you're exactly where you need to be, even if it doesn't look like what you thought it would. And maybe, just maybe, the most honest answer to "what do you do?" is simply this: I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm here. And that, I think, is more than enough. So the next time someone asks you, "What do you do?" and you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, that moment of hesitation, just take a breath. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to compress yourself into a single sentence or a job title that doesn't feel quite right. You're allowed to be complex. You're allowed to be evolving. You're allowed to say, "It's complicated," and leave it at that. Because here's what I've come to understand. The people worth knowing aren't looking for a resume. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for someone real enough to admit they're still becoming. They're looking for the kind of person who can sit with uncertainty and not fall apart. And if someone can't handle that, if they need you to be smaller or neater or more comprehensible just so they can feel comfortable, then maybe they're not really asking about you at all. Maybe they're just making conversation. But you're doing something braver than fitting into a box. You're building a life that's genuinely yours. You're learning and stumbling and trying and growing, all at the same time. And that takes more courage than any job title ever could. So tonight, when you're lying in bed again, staring up at that ceiling, and the question creeps back in, "What do I do?" Maybe you can answer it differently this time. Maybe you can say, I show up. I try. I care. I'm still here. And maybe that's the most important thing any of us can do. The rain will keep falling. The world will keep turning. And you'll keep moving forward, one uncertain step at a time. And that's not just okay. That's beautiful.
Thank you for listening, and see you in the next story.